Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. As we sit here and talk about what's happening with Israel and Palestine, it's important to remember that the death toll mounts and the Israeli atrocities continue ceaselessly. We'll be talking about particularly the war of narratives with regard to aid, which to I think anybody sensible seems atrocious when we talk about the kind of aid that is needed in Palestine, the politics that is being played over that aid and the fact that it should be made accessible to the Palestinians as soon as possible. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about the resolution and the politics over the resolution, and if there's any likelihood of there being a ceasefire anytime soon. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Naila Chauhan, who's a former ambassador. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Munir Ahmed, who is an IR expert. Thank you for joining us today. And Nida Salam Chaudhry, who's a human rights activist. Thank you for being with us today. Naila, like we were earlier saying, you know, a war of narratives on the issue of aid, at least to me, it seems, you know, unheard of. We are looking at what the Israelis are saying and what the actual situation is with regard to the aid being available to those in need in Palestine. And that number mounts even as we speak. What is your overall assessment of the situation?
Well, Mehrun, I think it's just not simply a war of narratives. There are political objectives behind.
Okay.
So what seems to be a question of commas and full stops in sentences, it is political agendas quoted in those words. So we have to look at all these amendments that are being talked about in the United Nations right now very carefully. Currently the resolution which is under consideration is by UAE, and USA is also under pressure. They cannot keep on exercising veto. So they are also keen that a resolution should be adopted.
Okay.
But they do not want to compromise on their agenda as far as Israel is concerned. So they would not want Israel to be mentioned in the resolution. And then the whole politics, as I see it, is on, we had spoken earlier on the invocation of Article 99 by the Secretary General,
right,
after which this resolution was adopted. And it would call for, because as you know, UNGA resolutions are not mandatory.
Yes.
But this specific resolution after invocation of Article 99 is implementable.
Okay.
Either through sanction or through troops on the ground to facilitate aid. Israel doesn't want UN troops to be there to facilitate aid. And USA is supporting that. They do not want to use, earlier on we were talking about sustainable cessation of hostilities. They have watered it down, and now they are saying suspension instead of cessation. It's not about ceasefire anymore. It is basically halting the war that is going on. And earlier on it was Israel that was really the guardian of the gates to the aid to Palestinians. Now they're looking at other options, for example, coming through Egypt via Sinai. So what you think is game of narratives is very deep politics that are undercurrents in the international
I think that's
forum.
probably the, you know, the way that you've summed it up is probably, you know, right. And I'm going to go to Munir Sahab on this. Munir Sahab, it's a game of politics, but the question is that game of politics is costing lives even as we speak. So the question is it going to be politics overriding the kind of humanitarian conditions, you know, that are not any worse from what's happened in Nazi Germany? Do you see that, you know, it resonating? Also, the world has a large, huge part of the world has spoken when we see thousands, even the governments that are supporting, out and out supporting Israel, the people are not.
You are right. People are not supporting whatever their governments are doing to support Israel. But unfortunately, people's voice is not heard. And we have seen over 20,000 people have been died in Gaza. And but they keep on, the bombardment is on, right from sea and land and from air. And the recent report of OCHA has that was released yesterday. There are like more than 738 have injured and 390 have been killed just in the recent attack. This is the situation. On the other hand, the aid is not reaching to the people. And that is the question. And I don't know what would help the Gaza people to get medical aid or the food, while the World Food Program has yesterday said that there is acute shortage of crisis of food over there.
And that builds up, that's building up.
Yeah,
even,
that's building up.
That.
And on the other hand, US and Israel, they are like spinning all the point of view that is actually based on reality and on facts. And that is really worrisome for everyone. And now they are playing tactics to delay the resolution that was generated by the UN
Let's talk about the resolution. I also, let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Nida. Nida, can you hear me?
Mahrukh, I can hear you.
Nida, there's also, what is being called as, gate control as far as Israel is concerned. Is there, in your opinion, of course there's little doubt that there's a lot of truth to the kind of gate control that Israel is exercising over the provision of aid to the Palestinians. Isn't this unprecedented, even in the kind of war scenario that we're looking at as far as, the Palestinians and their suffering is concerned?
Thank you very much for the invitation, Mahrukh. First, in the strongest words, I would like to utterly condemn the atrocities, war crimes, violations of human rights, violation of international laws, violations of humanitarian laws during the Palestinian-Israel conflict. The world's leaders, the silent and egoistic leaders, have experienced the worst death and destruction displayed in history. So as far as the aid is concerned, according to the World Health Organization, recently, yesterday's report, Israel has targeted medical facilities, hospitals were targeted, Gaza has been left without functional hospitals due to lack of fuel, staff, and supplies. Recently, yesterday's report, according to the United Nations, more than 576,000 Palestinians in Gaza face catastrophic hunger and starvation. Considering these horrific current circumstances, Palestine needs a constructively and transparently sustainable ceasefire to stop the killing. Because the recent report by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification published on Thursday stated that Gaza affected by a high level of acute food insecurity in the largest ever recorded globally. The World Food Program chief economist Arif Hussein stated that I have never ever seen something disastrous like Gaza and Palestinian and Israeli conflict. So the reality is that people are very close to large outbreak of diseases there because of their immune system have become so weak because they don't have enough nourishment. So we have seen the impact of Israel-Palestinian conflict out of that states as well and impacting the world at larger scale. Because recently in the United States, the Council on American Islamic Relations and Muslim Civil Rights Group stated that they have received 2,171 complaints of Islamophobia and anti-Arab since 7th October of Israel-Palestinian conflict. So according to the British police yesterday, hate crimes are increased 140% compared to the last year, the United Kingdom Anti-Islamophobia organization stated that Islamophobia and anti-Arab racism are out of control, and we have not seen that in the last 10 years, because the last large wave of Islamophobia was during the US president's era, Bush and Donald Trump announcement in December 2015 of the ban on visitors from the Muslim majority nations. So there's no doubt that Palestinians are suffering today, but with their suffering, people across the globe, especially from a Muslim community, are suffering too.
Fair enough. Let me come back to you, Naila. There's also, as far as the New York Times earlier reported that, as far as bombs are concerned, one of the biggest and most destructive bombs was used in southern Gaza, in area that had been marked safe for civilians. When these kind of tactics are being used, is it just, one wonders, is it about eliminating the population completely? What is it for Israel then? Because there's clearly no consideration. Even in war, there are certain rules, there are certain norms that are being flouted left, right and center.
You're very right that the atrocities that are being committed are unprecedented. This 2,000-pound bombs, even United States didn't use it, but Israel is using it. But then it is Netanyahu's agenda, because they're also nearing their elections.
Okay.
And the 7th October event that happened basically exposed the incompetence and the failure of the Netanyahu government. Now they want to do face saving for their people.
Okay.
And for that,
at the cost of other lives.
Yes, but it is not just at the cost of other lives. They want to eliminate, because this is a genocide that's going on. Netanyahu has always spoken of Greater Israel, and they keep on expanding. Their modus operandi is that first they bring their forces who eliminate the local population, and then they have these violent settlers who follow the soldiers and start taking over to settle there, which becomes then Israeli occupation. And this is step by step how they have expanded the Israeli map. Now Netanyahu wants to continue with that, and it seems the way they are pushing the Palestinians, whoever are left, because in since 7th October 20,000 Palestinians have died, and the number is increasing by every day, that perhaps he wants to push them to Sinai. And perhaps the agenda is a very big game that's going on. It's not as simple as it appears to be from the news.
But when we talk about agenda, Munir Saab, isn't it, we're talking about resolutions that have, implementation power that are also not being implemented. But in terms of ensuring that humanitarian conditions are being followed, even while this kind of, this onslaught continues, isn't there anything, the bodies like UN can do?
Certainly, UN has to adopt a process, and that process that finally be, make people responsible for, and that is being delayed. While US so rigid on it that, as Ambassador Saba mentioned, that they don't want to be mentioned Israel and certain other things that could be obligatory for Israel to do. So they are trying to avoid such words in it, and also like but as the Russia has mentioned that what is harm like in mentioning in the resolution of continuous and constant flow of aid to Gaza, and they are also avoiding to it, and this is really I say like very like surprising that the champion of human rights, the United States, is avoiding.
In a sense, is this a new law? Is this a new precedent that is being, the kind of treatment that is being meted out to civilians during this war?
As you just mentioned about Guardian, Guardian reported that 61% of casualties were in the total account, and over 2 million have been displaced, and wherever those displaced people go, and they are bombed. Even refugee camps and
then
like
one has
those.
to contend it's about eliminating the
Yeah,
civilian.
that is eliminate. They are eliminating, and the Netanyahu's cabinet members, they said that we will wipe off, and like either the Palestinian will live in the region or they, and that they are taking every step to eliminate, and the genocide is going on. And that is, and I think at this moment, United States has to take some rational point of view.
But I think United States has taken its you know, what can one say, has chosen which side of history they want to be. You know, they're going to be as far as this conflict is concerned.
I'm really glad to hear from U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders, who has asked the government to stop a $10 billion aid to Israel. And I don't know, there are many rational people are in the...
That's what I'm saying, that there are rational voices.
There are rational voices.
But they're not being heard.
But
as
they
far
are
as
not
the
being
US,
heard.
because it seems that what their public wants, what those rational voices are saying is not important. You know, it is the government. It is the stance, what suits them. Politics over human,
the Biden government,
mankind or humanity.
Yeah, the Biden government is really at this moment is totally irrational, and but they are just trying to take every step that could materialize the greater Israel. And in the next steps, they have planned to take over the land from other neighboring countries. And they know, the neighboring countries know that what would be happen afterwards. And they are trying to put up their concerns, raising voice. But unfortunately, even the veto powers have made UN Security Council as totally a failure at the moment. Their resolutions, their point of view, their sessions, they are being delayed.
Let me go to Nida on this. Nida, I want your opinion on, you know, the role of the ICJ as far as, you know, a conflict like Gaza and, you know, the situation there is concerned. Do you think that there's any chance that we can have something effective from there?
As far as the International Court of Justice is concerned, MAHRUKH, I think for that, again, the allies of Israel and the world leaders, their role plays a very important role. Obviously, according to the international law, international criminal law, actually, whatever Israel is doing, it falls under the ambit of criminality. So when the United Nations informed the world leaders, from Rishi Sunak to Biden and Macron to Trudeau, about the depth of the horrific atrocities, the Biden, Sunak and Caravan Company did not listen. They intentionally ignored and assured Netanyahu permanent license to kill many Palestinians as he wants to. So where was their moral compass at that time? As today, Sunak is saying too many civilian lives have been lost. Trudeau can help. It will require the will to help, the way he did back in the days, if we consider the Syrian conflict, Ukrainian conflict, and he opened the borders and accepted the refugees from that part of the world. So United Nations resolutions and international laws are still there. But again, we have already seen the doctrines of veto in the United Nations and the world allies and their leaders' behavior and attitude when it comes to Palestinians and Israeli conflict. So as far as the Trudeau is concerned, it required Trudeau to push back against the noxious nicers who will denounce him for doing the right thing at the right time. Because in 2015, during Christmas, he opened the borders for the refugees from Syria, and recently we have seen the Ukrainian conflict and all that.
Let me come back to you. Naila, what about, you know, one of the things as far as the ICJ is concerned, the role, certainly UN and ICJ don't seem to be working. But this statement that Nida is talking about from Rishi Sunak, for example, do you feel that, you know, now perhaps maybe, you know, there's a difference, maybe a dent or a small dent, you know, somewhere where we see this concern what can one call it, for the loss of civilian lives by prime ministers like Rishi Sunak?
Well, firstly,
Maybe it could be, do you think, I mean, let me clarify, could it be pressure because of, what the people of his country clearly seem to be saying when they protest in thousands outside?
There are two different things that you have mentioned, so allow me to comment on both. I would not say UN is not working.
Okay.
UN is working. And a large number of member countries are condemning it.
Okay.
And hectic negotiations are going on. That is as far as UN is concerned. ICJ, both parties have to go to ICJ. It cannot be unilateral. And for that you need the consent of both parties, which is not possible at this moment.
Yes.
So ICJ can only work when both parties are agreeable to be judged by ICJ. There are many countries who are now calling for the war crime tribunal to examine the atrocities that are being committed by Israel. But that will only happen once the war ends, because atrocities are growing by every day. So until it ends, the criminal court would not, be able to complete its investigation on it. That is another point. As far as the British Prime Minister is concerned, UK was one of the countries that abstained on the resolution. So no matter what you say, if in the UN your words are not supported by your actions,
right,
then I would not be that sure of what is the intention.
So in terms of the countries that are supporting the Palestinian cause, do you think that they are going to be able to, because at the end of the day when we talk about what's happening, it seems to be all about politics, and it seems to be so many thousands of people at the mercy of those politics. Whether it's simplistic or not, the question is that is the countries supporting Palestine, are they going to be able to pressurize the one country that matters in this?
They are pressurizing at this moment. The negotiations are also going on, and it seems that the United States permanent representative to UN has also given indication that they are now looking at the resolution in a positive way.
Okay.
But the criticism was that it has been so watered down that would it really mean anything? And she rejected that, and she said, no, this is a very strong resolution. As far as US was concerned, it was still a very strong resolution. The diplomatic effort is continuing, and it will come to, because you see Netanyahu also has a deadline, because by January he has to have achieved certain results, without which he cannot go into elections.
Which means
that exchange of hostages would also be an important issue. And on that, earlier on Hamas had agreed, but now they are saying that until complete ceasefire we are not going to talk about hostages. So that makes Netanyahu hostage to his own politics, because his own people are now condemning the current Israeli government for its actions, which puts Mr. Netanyahu in a very difficult situation. So now there are deadlines, because Biden also is ready for elections. So now there is a countdown on how long can they drag this.
And the popularity of what Israel is doing, as far as the US itself, the public itself is concerned.
Yes,
people don't support.
Yes.
The world doesn't support the civilian torture, the civilian killing, the civilian brutality.
You're right.
And the people don't support this either. We've seen the kind of protests in New York and Washington. We've seen the protests in London. We've seen, it's the politics aside. Can they afford to take this kind of pressure, like you are saying, with the closer they get to the elections, like Naila is saying, there's a countdown?
This is countdown, and if you go for any poll, and you would see the Biden government and the British government, the ruling party's popularity has gone down. They are trying to make it, but unfortunately, the loss has done too much, and to recover would be really a very difficult task for both the parties in the ruling parties in the United States and the UK. So that is the case. And just if I refer to Linda Thomas' statement that she said yesterday, that they are going to support aid to Gaza, and but the words of the resolution are too harsh, or like it should be, much, it should be softened. On the other hand, those who has drafted the resolution and those who has supported it, the nations are pushing a resolution that should be more hard and more like stringent to Israel and to the countries they are supporting Israel. But unfortunately, at this moment, they are just spinning the words just to camouflage their own strategic interventions to support Greater Israel, and also they have to, undo the pressure they are getting from their own people, and that is actually at the moment. But unfortunately, those who are supporting.
What next? I want to ask Nida this also. What next for the Palestinian people? In terms of even the countries that are supporting them, how, what do they do next? Is it just diplomatic pressure that has to keep on building up? What is it other than that?
I believe like at this moment, this resolution has to, the nations have to go through it. And of course, they cannot compromise on the words they have written in it. On the other hand, the United States is trying to dilute all the pressure that this resolution would, and they are delaying it. And hopefully, when there will be Friday in the UN Assembly, means like next day, and this would be taken in the UN General Assembly for voting. Security Council.
The role that Antonio Guterres has played in this is certainly, one has to appreciate his overall, and like Naila said, that UN is working.
Yeah.
But the question is how soon for the people that are dying every day.
As I mentioned, UN is a democratic process, and they have to go through, the process, and that is done.
Democratic, but also, there are those that are more powerful than others. So, that reality is right there also. Nida, your opinion on this as far as what's next for those that support Palestine?
All right, MAHRUKH, I strongly believe that the international community, and particularly Israel's allies, including EU member states, US and the Great Britain, should take concrete measures to protect Gaza civilians and population from unlawful attacks, impose a comprehensive embargo on all parties to conflict. Besides that, refrain from any statement or action would even indirectly legitimize Israel crime and violations in Gaza, pressure to Israel to lift its illegal 16 years blockade of the Gaza Strip, ensure the International Criminal Court ongoing investigation into the situation. So these are the resolutions, and obviously United Nations is definitely playing her part there, but unfortunately I think it's very slow. As you know, 2023 is nearly ending, and in Gaza, what happened to children, weak children, innocent children, and weak women. So with ending 2023, a whole population not only suffered, even diminished and disappeared from planet Earth.
Right, fair enough. Naila, as far as, we talked about public support, we talked about people coming out. In terms of boycott that we've also seen, calls for boycotting businesses that are Israeli owned. How effective is it in your opinion?
I think this boycott against the Israeli projects is coming up very strong.
Okay.
Because as the cliche goes that Jews are very particular about money.
Hmm.
So when money is stopped, that affects them. And there have been massive boycotts, not just in one country, but universally, all over the world. You can see boycotts against their products. That would definitely harm Netanyahu more.
And that's also another factor that's going to go against him as far as the elections
Indeed.
overall and the policy is concerned.
Indeed, you're very right. So that is a very effective strategy for ordinary people to go, while the leaders are talking at the UN, at people to people, as citizens of this world. I think this is an effective measure on top of the protests that are going on.
And the protests also, I think, you know, for us as you know, just on a human level, for those to continue happening, you know, it's extremely important so that itself the cause does not die down. And I think we've seen calls for that on social media also.
You're right, the momentum is very important, that you keep the momentum going and not to give up. Because like I saw this placard by one Palestinian saying that you may kill all Palestinians, but there will still be one Moses who will deal with you, you know. So Allah Ta'ala has his mechanism also.
Right.
If Pharaoh could be destroyed, now these people who were victims of pharaohs are acting worse than the pharaohs. So there is a divine justice also, not just the people's justice.
Is there precedent for the UN intervening and you know, it leading to peace, you know, in a situation like this?
Yes, there are, like we had spoken the other day also, that when
because we've seen
UNST
issues like Kashmir, which, you know, unfortunately are issues that have not been able, you know, to see that kind of effectiveness.
True, but this Article 99 that was invoked by the UN Secretary General has seen success in earlier incidents when it was used. But of course the real politics is there. The thing is that they always change the goalpost. So just as you think you're reaching your goal, the goalpost is shifted. So you still have to keep running longer. And in this case, and in case of Kashmir, that is the tragedy, that they keep on changing the goalpost, you know. But we can't give up on it.
But it amounts to ultimately the kind of pressure that nations like the US, in the case of Kashmir, of course, there's India, you know, are you know, the clout that they enjoy. So those are realities of, like you said, real politics, which unfortunately, you know, we have to sit and acknowledge and contend with.
But we can't just accept it. We have to keep, you know, resisting it. And India is also not in a very comfortable situation. You saw the other day, Modi, I think, expelled or suspended 140 parliamentarians.
Yes.
But in Palestine also, USA had to come down to compromise. And that is why now they are willing to, you know, work with the international community on having the resolution, because they also cannot keep on exercising the right to veto. It blemishes them further. And then Biden government is also under pressure, because the people of the United States have stood up against this blind support to atrocities. That on one hand you talk about human rights and you talk about Universal Declaration on Human Rights, and on the other hand you are the perpetrator of violations, the largest violations of human rights ever to be recorded in history. So that is bringing pressure on these governments also. So I would not be that pessimistic about it. I am optimistic. But of course, in the process, we are losing a lot of innocent lives. And at this moment, I understand not a single hospital is working in Gaza. So now, from now onwards, the injured have no place to go. And dead also, how many mass graves will you have? You know, so it's unbelievable atrocity that is being committed, and they will be held accountable. It's not that they won't be, but obviously so many lives would have been lost. Even you
and are being lost even as we speak. There's no respite.
And they're saying that they may go into a famine. So the food shortages may create
Do you
further.
think it's going to be, let me go to Munisa. Munisa, do you think it's going to, as far as the aid is concerned, like Naila is saying, to not go into famine, to not go, the situation there, do you think that can be remedied, that can be changed? Instead of this new, like earlier we talked about narrative on aid, do you think the provision of aid can be secured for the Palestinians? At least that will be a huge step, at this time.
As
minimum,
as the U.S. ambassador to United Nations said that, Linda Thomas, I just quoted that, they would support aid to Gaza. But I really don't see such kind of, they are just words, and we don't see any such actions. As Ambassador Naila mentioned, there is no hospital working. And yesterday, even the Palestinian Red Crescent Society's ambulance center was attacked. And they have taken all the paramedics with them, and the ambulances were destroyed and made the patients and those hostages. We don't see actions, and certainly we cannot, trust anymore the words they say that they would allow any, aid to Palestine. On the other hand, as I mentioned, that World Food Programme has already mentioned that the Palestine is at the acute food crisis. Acute food crisis means like there is nothing left over there. And like, of course, like in such a devastated region or place, if nothing comes from other sources, there will be a famine. They don't have medicines, they don't have food to eat, they don't have water.
What about the UN on the provision of aid?
UN is working on it, as I mentioned, that World Food Programme, OCHA and other agencies. But when they cease fire, there would be a pause in the firing. They would be, allowed to go over there. Otherwise, like, they cannot enter into the strip where bombardment from sea, land and air are. So they cannot enter during the bombardment. But there is no pause in the bombardment, and of course there are, those who want to enter to the strip, Israelis control them. They have taken control of the gates on the passage that could reach to the suffering people with AIDS, or for even the medicines and the water. Such kind of situation is there.
Nida, your quick comments. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
The conflict should allow and facilitate the flow of humanitarian aid to Gaza through land, sea and air route. This includes prompt implementation of the opening of the Karim Abu Salim border crossing and called Karim Chalam in Hebrew actually. States that are not party to the conflict should be welcome to permit free passage of humanitarian relief. This particularly refers to the Egypt and the coordination of its borders crossing with the Gaza at the southern Gaza city of Rafah. The United Nations should exclusively monitor all aid that enters through these routes. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for being with us. Naila Chauhan, thank you for joining us. Munir Ahmed Saab, thank you for being with us. Nida Salam Chaudhary, thank you for joining us. Words fail as we talk about what's happening in Gaza at this time, the death toll that continues to mount, and now, of course, we've seen the politics over the provision of aid also. There is really no law that we will see happen as far as those suffering in Gaza are concerned. The women, the children that continue to die. We can only hope and pray that there will be results soon, that the kind of pressure that is mounting will continue in all shapes and forms, so that those that are responsible for this kind of brutality and their allies can budge from this inhumane stance that is being taken. Thank you so much for joining us today.